Ahoy mates, Captain Marrow here, and today I'm going to be doing a review on Dead Men Tell No Tales, the board game, along with the Kraken Expansion. So this is a game that is very similar to Flashpoint, Pandemic, and Betrayal at House on the Hill. If you're a fan of any three of those games, and you also like the pirate theme, this game is pretty much all of that rolled together. So I'm a big fan of this game. I really like pirate games. Apparently I enjoy pirate everything, I guess, obviously. And this game is a ton of fun. So first off, it's supposed to be a game for about 2 to 5 people. However, with the Kraken expansion, you can play with up to 6 people, but the sweet spot is definitely between 3 and 4. Alright, so here we're going to be going over the components for the board game Dead Men Tell No Tales. Starting off, we have our 4 starting tiles, here, 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 and here, arranged in this formation, as well as our dinghies outside, from where the pirates have come over to the skeleton ship, which is also the explosion track marker. As various powder kegs explode in the ship, we keep track of our explosions, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 explosions before the pirates lose the game. The Skelet's Revenge no longer exists, and everything on board is lost, and the players collectively lose the game. We also have our 20 room tiles. Now, these room tiles have various artwork on them, along with a number that determines the initial strength of the fire in that room, along with certain symbols, like this, that denotes that when this tile gets placed, it has a powder keg on it, as well as what level the fire can get to in that room before the powder keg in that room explodes. There's a handful of these rooms that are going to have powder kegs spawn in them. We also have our 7 pirate figures. By default, the game comes with these wooden meeples. Our deckhands are these skulls with eye patches. These represent various skeleton crew on board the Skelet's Revenge. These tokens will be placed into rooms as they appear sometimes, as well as they will move around the ship and try to defeat the pirates on board trying to steal their treasure. Next up, we have our player boards, which are rather sizable, as you can see in comparison to my hand. What would normally be keeping track of hit points or health in a normal board game, in this game is instead replaced with fatigue. As your pirate goes through the burning ship, you're going to collect amounts of fatigue, eventually getting to the point of where you die of exhaustion, or smoke inhalation, or however else you would like to imagine that. Down here at the bottom, you keep track of your combat strength, and that's actually what these tokens are for. These tokens represent the various characters that you play, and they will be placed onto the player boards to keep track of how powerful you are and how well prepped you are for battle. Next up, we have our dice. We have a collection of 12 yellow dice and 12 red dice. These dice get placed onto the room tiles and represent how bad the fire is in those rooms on a number of 1 to 6, basically. The only difference between yellow and red is some rooms are red and some rooms are yellow. Throughout the course of the game, certain cards are going to intensify the fires in yellow rooms, sometimes in red rooms. Next up, we have treasure guards, which are these tokens that represent a skeleton warrior, more experienced than a deckhand, as well as on the back side, the treasure that he's carrying. And we have here the Skelet's Revenge cards. So this is the back of the card, very nice artwork. And on the flip side, as they are drawn after each player's turn, it will tell you which rooms increase in intensity of fire. Sometimes just the rooms with yellow, sometimes the rooms with red, and sometimes it affects rooms with both. Next up, we have the character cards. On the back side, it is a collection of doubloons and coins. And on the flip side, we have our characters, featuring various artwork, each of them themed to be a specific color to match the tokens, and each of them have special abilities that can help you defeat the skeletons, the deckhands, assist you in looting, or some of them can help you in putting out the fires. We then also have item cards. The item cards on the back feature a flintlock pistol, and on the flip side feature things such as a flintlock pistol, compass, rum, a bucket, dagger, sword, and a blanket. These items assist you throughout the game in putting out fires and defeating skeletons. Next up, we have player aid cards, which can remind the players what they can and cannot do throughout the course of the game. Next up, we have our Captain From token, which is a special skeleton who is specifically the captain of the Skeleton's Revenge. He is an optional rule that can be added into the game that can make the game harder if need be. And lastly, for components, we have this voluptuous bag. The bag is very silky and feels like one of the best things in the world. This is what all the skeleton tokens go into that you'll be drawing throughout the course of the game and placing them into the Skeleton's Revenge. So you will be able to fondle this bag a decent amount, which is good because it feels great to fondle. Now let's go over the components for the Dead Men Tell No Tales, the Kraken Expansion. First up, we have the Kraken board. Now the Kraken board has a tentacle token that allows you to move it up and down as the Kraken's strength grows or weakens throughout the course of the game. We also have the Kraken's health, which starts at 5 by default, but can start as high as 7 if you would like a more difficult game, and as it takes damage, it eventually comes down here to the bottom, in which case the Kraken dies. Tilt this up so you can get a better look at the board. And I'll bring this up. There we go. Really like the shape of it. Made it look all wooden, all busted around the edges. Next up, the expansion also includes a new character, Swivel Gun Sandy. This is the meeple for her, along with 5 new action tokens. And here is her card. Expansion also includes a new alternate card for Black Gus Garrett with new abilities. The expansion also gives us 5 more deckhands, as well as 7 new deckhand leaders. The deckhand leaders are just red versions of them, which are a bit more powerful, but not as powerful as the skeletons guarding the treasure on board the Skeleton's Revenge. The expansion also gives us 8 cannon tokens. Now these cannons are going to be placed around the edge of the board and represent cannons being fired from your ship over to the ship that you are currently in. The cannons assist you in defeating the Kraken once it appears. We also have adrenaline tokens. Now these adrenaline tokens are square-ish that feature various artwork that give you special abilities. You gain adrenaline tokens whenever you chop off a tentacle from the Kraken. You draw 2 at random, you pick the one you want, and you pitch the other one back. Now, in the base game, you have trapdoor symbols that appear on the various tiles that you flip over, and these are where the skeleton deckhands spawn from. The expansion adds in these tokens that you can place over top. These tokens feature an open trapdoor, which means that the deckhands can still spawn, but now you can flip the tokens over to close the trapdoor and prevent them from spawning, at least temporarily. These tokens are meant to replace the ones in the base game. Next up, we have the Kraken cards. The artwork on the back of the cards looks very nice, and however, you only get 4 of them. These 3 cards simply indicate that the Kraken scoots around the edge of the ship, moving from column to column. And this card actually represents the Kraken attacking. These cards are shuffled, a card is flipped over, and that's what the Kraken does. They get shuffled again, get flipped over, and that is what the Kraken does. So every time the Kraken goes to activate, there is a 25% chance that he actually attacks the ship, otherwise he is more likely going to be scooting around. And we also have a new red cloth bag, which is not plush and velvet. And here is the actual Kraken from Dead Men Tell No Tales, the Kraken expansion. So we have the primary Kraken head itself, turn him around a little bit. And this is the guy that will be moving along the outer edges of the Skeleton's Revenge as you plunder it. Throughout the course of the game, his various tentacle pieces will burst up through the wooden boards in the rooms. Eventually, an end piece will pop up, of which he can attack from. As you play the game, looting the rooms, killing skeletons and such, you can also kill off tentacle pieces. If you were to kill off this tentacle piece, not only would it kill off this section, but it would take off the rest of it as well. Or, alternately, if you were to only chop in here, this piece would go, as would the end of the tentacle. Also featured here is the new miniature that comes for Swivel Gun Sandy. Not sure if I'll be able to get this to focus. Now again, the whole thing comes unpainted. I had to paint these myself, and I did my best to try to paint the wooden boards to match the colors of the tiles in the room, kind of a purplish blue. As you go through the game, the players have these doubloons which represent action points, which allow the players to do things on board the ship. This game, everyone is playing co-op. Everyone are all pirates that have come over to a sinking, burning ship called the Skeleton's Revenge. It is a skeleton pirate ship, and the goal is all the players want to come over here and collect all the loot that they can before the ship sinks, before it explodes in a raging inferno, before the Kraken pulls it beneath the waves, or before the rest of your own pirate crew die on board here. At the beginning of the game, you decide how difficult you want it to be by deciding how many treasures you are here to collect. 4 or 5 is the normal, but you can play to go get more if you want a more lengthier and a harder experience. Everyone arrives to the side of the ship, a blasted open, busted hole in the hull, and everyone arrives via rowboat. To go through the game, you take turns flipping over various tiles, adding it to the ship, which means that the ship randomly builds itself each time that you play, creating a different layout every time, connecting the doorways to previous doorways, and these rooms have dice on them which represent, on a scale of 1 to 6, how bad the fire is in that room. Certain rooms have powder kegs in them, and once the number of the die in that room gets to the number on the powder keg explodes. Once you have enough explosions, you lose the game because the ship just completely sinks at that point. As the new tiles are flipped over, skeleton deckhands spawn in, along with deckhand leaders if you're playing with the Kraken Expansion, along with skeleton guardians that are guarding treasure here on the ship. So the goal is to keep flipping over tiles, putting out fire, keeping your fatigue meter down, while trying to spawn these skeleton guardians so that you can fight them, kill them, take their treasure, and take it back to the rowboat. Throughout the course of the game, if you're unlucky, Captain From of the Skeleton's Revenge may spawn, the skeleton captain himself, here to defend his treasures as the ship goes to sink and burn down beneath the waves, or get pulled down by the Kraken. And as long as he's out, the players cannot win the game. This is an optional rule that you can have in to make the game harder. You can leave him out if you want a simpler experience, or want to have one less way that you can lose the game, essentially. But how you want to win the game is show up, flip over the tiles, spawn the skeleton deckhands, spawn the skeleton guardians, find the treasure, take it back to the rowboat. You don't want any of your pirates to die. You don't want Captain From to be alive on the ship, which if you defeat him, he goes back into the bag that he was randomly drawn from. However, since new tokens are randomly drawn from the bag, it means that he can reform. So he can only temporarily be defeated. There is no permanently defeating Captain From. So you might have to defeat him more than once, especially if he spawns early, you deal with him, and he comes back towards the end of the game, potentially. If you're playing with the Kraken expansion, at some point in time in the game, within roughly the first 4 turns, I believe, the Kraken will make its appearance. When it pops up, the various tentacles will burst through the deck, and tentacle end pieces will pop up, and you'll have to chop at that. He will be scooting around the edge of the board, casting waves of tentacles into the ship, and if you ever have to place all the tentacle pieces for him, the ship is pulled under and everyone loses. It again is a co-op game, which means that everyone all wins together or loses together. Whenever your pirate dies, you actually respawn as a new pirate that gets sent over from your ship over to the Skeleton's Revenge. By default, there are 7 playable pirates that come in the base game, and another playable pirate, Swivelgun Sandy, that comes in the Kraken expansion. There's more options to pick from, but it doesn't mean that you should play with all 8 pirates at once, because whenever you die, you can respawn as one of the pirates that's not being used. However, if you die and you go to respawn as a new pirate and there are none left, then everyone loses as well. So the players kind of have limited respawns. I love this game. I definitely give it a 10 out of 10. Everything is beautiful. The artwork on the cards is beautiful. The miniatures that come from the Kraken expansion, as well as the miniatures that come from the expansion that adds in the actual miniatures for the playable pirates. All of it's great. The gameplay is great. It all makes sense. It's not overly complex, and it's also not a super simple game. It's a nice midway point that I really enjoy. I have a whole stack of pirate games. My favorite pirate game that exists is Merchants and Marauders. I'll be doing a review of that at some point, I'm sure. But this is definitely up there with it when it comes to how the game looks, how it plays, and it's just interesting that Dead Men Tell No Tales is a co-op pirate game. Everything else isn't that way. Most pirate games include something that has to do with fighting each other, treachery, deceit mechanics, lying to each other, basically being pirate scumbags to each other. But in this one, you actually play as a cooperative crew, and you're playing against the game itself and the randomly generated AI that pop up throughout the midst of it. So if you like the concept of playing as a crew of pirates, boarding a sinking skeleton ship that is on fire while the Kraken attacks and tries to pull it under as well, and killing skeleton pirates and looting the burning ship, and if you like games that have to do with action economy, this is definitely a game that you're going to enjoy. I guess you also have to enjoy the pirate theme, so I guess there's that, but there's a reason you're watching this video of me, a pirate, detailing a pirate board game, so you're probably set on that one. But this game is a ton of fun. I definitely recommend it. I've played it a handful of times. I'm definitely looking forward to playing it some more. But I guess that's the end of this review. So if you'll excuse me, I have no one to play this with on the island. Thanks everyone for taking your time to listen to a topic so interesting to me, and hopefully it was of some interest to you. Go ahead, click the like button, subscribe, etc, etc. You know, all the typical shit that everyone says at the end of every video. Feel free to hit me up on Facebook. I have a page there, as well as I also admin a group, Hoist the Colors, if you're into stuff such as memes, a place to post links, etc. Anything pirate. And if you're mostly just into the aesthetics of everything, I also run a Tumblr page under the name of Caribbean Piracy. Now, I'm going to see you next time, and remember, keep the black flag flying.